right, here we go.
All right. So, where did our family come from?
That's so hard to say. Okay, our family, on my dad's side, my father was born in Milledgeville, Georgia. My mother was a first generation of Irish people born in this country. So she was born here in Hartford. My dad migrated here following his family, and he met my mom, and they got together. Your mother, me, and my siblings were born here in Hartford, Connecticut, and your mom and her siblings were born in Hartford, Connecticut. And then your mom migrated to North Carolina. But let me go back a little bit. My father's father was from the Virgin Islands, and he came to America and met my father's mother in Milledgeville, Georgia. And then she died, and he moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. My dad went in the military when he was young, because he quit school in the 7th grade to finish taking care of his brothers and sisters. When he was old enough, he went in the military. He actually fought in World War II. Yeah. My dad was born in 1921. So when he got out of the military, he came to Hartford, Connecticut, because his sister and brothers were here by then. And he came to Hartford, Connecticut, and his brother John, my uncle, actually introduced him to my mom. And they got together here in Hartford and stayed here to forever. Next question.
Okay. How do you know that?
Is that deep enough?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So, how do you know that?
Well, this is a point I wanted to tell you too. When I visited my dad in Milledgeville, because when my youngest brother turned 18, my dad moved back to Milledgeville, and so his older siblings than him, he had siblings older than him, and Daddy had a Bible in her home with all of their dates, their birth dates documented in that Bible. That's how they recorded it and kept it. But I know this because my dad taught them to us. He told us all this. That's how I know about my granddad coming from the Virgin Islands, about his parents being an interracial couple, and all of that stuff.
Oh, okay. Can you, or actually, how many generations can you trace back from your parents?
Just to my grandparents. That's as far back as I can go.
Okay. And can you recall any names?
Well, my grandfather's name was Ferris Mac Richard. That's my dad's. My mom's name was Elizabeth Galligan, and her father's name was John Galligan.
Can you tell me their birthdays?
Nope, don't know them. Actually, let me just say that the reason I don't know anything about my mom's side of the family, them being an interracial couple and all, my mom's family disowned her completely before I was even born. So, my mom didn't talk much about her family, and they certainly never tried to contact her. So all I know is what she, would mention here and there, their names, because she told me, but she didn't have a lot to say. I guess the relationship was really bad.
Okay. Can you recall any places of birth?
My grandmother, on my mom's side, I'm sure, was born in Ireland.
Okay.
Since my mom was the generation in her family here in the United States, her mother must have came. They came over here on a ship during the potato famine. And like I said, my mom was born in 32, and she was born here in Hartford, Connecticut. And she grew up on Mount Avenue. And she hung out down on Front Street and Windsor Street, like down in the bottom with all the other dregs of society. So I like to say that. Like saying that.
Okay. Do we have any veterans in our family?
My dad and your Uncle Doug, my brother. My father was infantry in the Army, and my brother was in the Air Force. My dad even got a Purple Heart. He was injured in World War II. He had a metal plate in his head and everything.
Okay, can you tell me any stories about our family?
Like what? You gotta be more specific than that. Tell me something to tell you. Like, what kind of a story are you talking about?
Like, I guess how anybody met? Like.
Oh yeah.
What?
Well, like I said, my mom used to hang out. She used to hang out down the bottom with, you know, a lot of different types of people hung out there. And her best friend his name was Jay Mangini. And he was Italian. His wife was full-blooded American, Native American. And then she had a friend named Kathleen, who was Italian. She had a lot of Italian friends. She had a few Irish girlfriends, too. But anyway, she used to be best friends with my father's brother. And then when my dad came home from the military and started to come down where they were hanging out at, my uncle introduced my mom to my dad, and he fell in love instantly and married her. And my uncle stopped speaking to him for a while too, because I guess he realized after my father fell in love with my mom and married her that he liked her. He realized he had liked her too, but he just never. They were more like brothers.
Can you repeat that last part? I didn't hear you.
From where?
Like just the last. What'd you say?
Say it one more time.
Yeah, can you just like repeat the last couple words you said?
That my uncle stopped speaking to my dad.
Yeah.
Because when my dad fell in love with my mom and married her, it wasn't until after that my uncle realized he had loved my mom and wanted her for himself. So he stopped speaking to my dad for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's funny.
Do you have any more stories like that?
Please, I got tons of stories.
Okay, can you give me a couple more?
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. You gotta help me out. Tell me something to tell you. I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Give me a hint.
Any funny stories?
Well, I know this one isn't funny, but my mom and dad, like I said, he was born in 1921 and she was born in 1932. So when they met and started to fool around, there was still a lot of not slavery, but I mean a lot of stuff going on. And he was black and she was white, and her cousins were cops on the force and stuff like that, and they just had a hard time. They had a really hard time being a couple because they were interracial, because there was so much stuff going on. I mean, Martin Luther King was still alive. He, you know, the civil rights was going on and all that stuff, and it was hard for them. It was really hard. Like I said, her parents disowned her completely. Her mom and her sisters disowned her completely and never looked back. As a matter of fact, as their mom got older, they used to take care of their mom, and they told their mother that she was dead. And they told her mother was dead. So nobody ever, we didn't even know we had, you know, like it was never a question if we had other relatives. We always thought it was just on my dad's side. And his mom was already dead. And I didn't meet my grandfather, my dad's dad, until 1971, something like that. And I mean, he was here on a visit from Cincinnati, and he didn't stay long. But I got to meet him. That was the one and only time I met him.
That was the only time you got to meet him?
That was the only time I ever got to meet him. At one time, and then, you know, sometime a few years after that visit he made here, he died. So we didn't, you know, like we didn't grow up knowing that we had a whole bunch of family and stuff like that. We didn't. I mean, when the riots happened, when they killed Martin Luther King, and the riots broke out here, and people began to, like, you know, protest and things like that, and a political move happened on my family where, you know, I guess because, you know, her family and their law background and stuff like that, everybody had decided that it was best if they dissolved this union, this family. So they took my dad and put him in county jail. It was called 7th Street Jail back then. And they took my mom and put her in a women's prison. But they never charged either one of them with anything. They just put them in there and held them. And then the law came into our house and collected all 5 of us and took all 5 of us and put us in 5 different foster homes. And decided, to me, what my understanding of it was that they were going to put 5 kids in 5 different parts of the country so that they could never get back together. These people could never collect their kids, and the kids would never know each other. You know, eventually we would all forget each other. My little brother, my baby brother was only, like, he was still in diapers. He was walking and everything, but he was still not trained yet. It was crazy. Well, anyway, there was this guy and his wife living next door to us at the time. And this man's name was Chester Combs, and he was politically involved. So he used to work the campaigns. And there was a man running for mayor that year called Mayor Atkinson. And my grandfather, we used to call him and his wife Grandma and Grandpa. We thought that was their names because they had like 30-something grandkids. And so everybody used to call them Grandma and Grandpa, so we thought that was their name. So we used to call them that too, because we didn't have any family. We didn't know that was a title, you know, to somebody in your family. Well, anyway, he stepped in and was like, no, you can't do these people like this. And he took us. But they were so determined to win, like to dissolve this family, that they wouldn't let him have custody of all 5 of us. And my uncle couldn't, he had 8 kids of his own, so they wouldn't let him take his own blood nieces and nephews in. They wouldn't allow him to do that. So this guy, Grandpa, Chester Combs, he ended up getting me and my sister as his foster children. And my 2 younger brothers Joe and Mike, they went to a home, and then my brother Doug went to a home all by himself, where he was sexually molested. All kinds of stuff happened to us through those 9 years. It was 9 years before we saw my mother and father again. And got back. My grandpa, before a year was even, before it even turned a year that we had been living with him, he died. So my grandmother, you know, she didn't really want us in the beginning. You know, he was the do-gooder. She had too many kids and grandkids of her own. But he ended up dying, and we was, like, devastated because I'm sure me and my sister both was thinking, like, what's going to happen to us? But she ended up keeping us for the 9 years. She came to love us and treat us like we were her own grandkids. After 9 years, like 1973, 74, something like that, we ended up going back to my mom and dad. By then, my dad was, you know, sick and ailing from diabetes. He ended up getting both legs amputated, one at a time too. But he lost both his legs below the knees, and when my little brother turned 18, he left and went back to Georgia. And I need to add that they had a history of drinking. They both had a drinking problem. So that complicated things too.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
It is very interesting because, I mean, you know, a lot of things happen, even in those 9 years. Mm-hmm. But I can't even think of a funny story right now. Maybe if you prompt a funny story by asking me a question. You can't think of anything?
No, we can just move over to the last question.
Okay.
Okay, so you were basically saying that we only have birth and death certificates of our family?
Well, I was saying that I know I have my birth certificate, but my dad died in 1989. And I never saw his birth certificate. All I ever saw for my dad was those recordings in a Bible when I went to Georgia. But when he died and I went to Georgia, I never saw the Bible again. I don't know what happened to it, who took it, or if it got destroyed or what. And my mom was born in 1932 here, but I'm sure now that she's died, because she died in 2013, I'm pretty sure all I could get for them is a copy of their death certificates proving that they had been alive at some point. But I'm not sure I can get any other kind of recording. I don't have any documentation for my family on either side.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I can get it.
Okay, not unless we go on Ancestry.com, right?
Right, but I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. Never mind. I ain't gonna tell you my opinion.
Okay, are you sure?
I feel like a lot of those websites are just a hoax. I mean, they can tell you anything. But yeah, you can find out something from them, but I'm not sure how truthful it is.
That's a good point. Okay, well, I think those are all the questions I got.
Okay, if you need me, call me.
Okay, thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you for choosing me.
No problem. Alright, you have a good night.